when it comes to the late game. He is so much more comfortable with Hive Tech than he has been in the past. Should be a good series. I'm excited for it. Let's do it. Our second best of 5 is on the way in the bottom left side. We're looking at the main base of the Polish Protoss, who plays a fine game of StarCraft, but sometimes overcomplicates things a little bit, if you ask me. It is Gerald.
And his opponent, spotting up the top right for Good Game Gaming. Team Triple G, it is Rattata. I'm pretty excited about this one. Yeah, that's a good bit of analysis right there. I would say sometimes a little bit of overcomplication can be the downfall of a very, very good player and be the difference between being, a great player and being an elite player. And Rattata, if anything, he might fall a little bit too far in the other direction where his killer instinct is a little bit too strong, but I think you are correct in that he's become much more comfortable in going to the late game in certain games. Neat little move right there from Gerald, by the way. Didn't cost much, didn't do much, but he just kind of like a little flick on the ear, blocking that gas right there. Just like I know what you're doing here. Just a little bit of a nuisance.
Yeah, it's all the little things just to throw your opponent off a little bit in the beginning of the game. But Rattata plays an insane amount of StarCraft, so these kinds of things are definitely not going to shake him up. It is very important, I think, for Gerald that the first game in this best of 5, he can just do his thing. He can execute his build. I assume we're going to open up with a couple of Oracles, but he's actually no stranger to still walking around with the Adepts as well, Resonating Glaives, or sometimes do something very funky with quick robo units. But it's important that he can get a solid setup for the first 6, 7, 8 minutes, that he's got a good idea of what Rattata is doing. You definitely don't want to have a disaster game where you're kind of scouting, miss the Spire, and then 12 mutas show up, and you're just not ready for it. That's not the way to kick off a best of 5. So keeping a good eye on what your opponent is doing, I think is very key here in the first game.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. And Rattata is one of those very dangerous players. Even in addition to the mutas, he might just decide to go for a Ling Bane all-in off of, a low drone count, or even in the mid-game off of 40 to 50 drones. He can just pull the trigger off 2, 3 gases and just try and kill a third base. And if you're not prepared for that, if you don't see it coming, you don't have a shield battery, you don't have your units in the correct positions, you can just suddenly lose the game to that. And it can be a really sour way to start that series. Ooh, we do see just the kind of attempt at a 2-building wall right here out of Gerald. Rattata tries to get in with the scout, and Gerald just stops it. Oh, wait, what? Is that a... Yeah, that's a full wall, right?
Just temporarily, yeah, absolutely. At the moment it is. I don't think he's going to let that finish up. That'd be very surprising. But I think he just wants to make sure that the first 2 Adepts can get to the other side of the map very quickly. He can start being annoying with them, maybe pick off a drone here and there. And then I think he will still just cancel that gate. But one thing he does not want to deal with is 4 to 8 Zerglings. Oh, that's kind of cute, actually, attacking from the high ground. He just doesn't want to deal with any Lings making it into his natural. And this is the power of getting those first 2 Adepts to the other side of the map as quickly as he's done. This is already somewhat annoying.
Yeah, just causing a little bit of disruption, forcing Rattata to, build some of those extra Zerglings. Now, Gerald is going to just move back across the map. If he can avoid using a recall, that would be really, really crucial. He certainly doesn't want to lose those Adepts. Lings will get in here, and they should get the kill on this probe. Yes, they will. That's a nice little pickoff. Oh, and there's the surround coming in. Will the Oracle be able to keep this Adept alive? The answer is no, and that is a little bit of a nuisance, but he did pick off most of the Zerglings, so shouldn't be any further delay on that 3rd Nexus.
Somewhat confused as well about Oracle into Void Ray. It's not something we see super often anymore, so I guess this Void Ray really is just a mandatory, safety Void Ray almost, where it's all right, I'm going to pick off one Overlord and make sure that I can get my Nexus up. And now we do see the second Stargate. So Gerald is going to go... Is he going to go heavy on the Void Rays, or are we going to go back into Oracles? I'm a little bit confused. It seems like it's back into Oracles. So that Void Ray is just meant to be the safety Void Ray at home. Make sure that we can send the Oracles to the other side of the map and find as much damage as possible. This now has honestly fallen out of fashion a little bit, as it's just not as good as it was before. I don't think we got the scout off right on the second Stargate there. There's no way.
No, it was pretty close. Getting these Adepts as they warp in is actually a pretty big deal right there. Gerald wanted to go for some aggression here. Oh my god, he almost loses the Oracle as well. A bit of a bit of a stumbling block here in this early game from Gerald. Kind of a couple of rough situations right there.
Yeah.
It will be double Stargate Phoenix to follow this up. I was wondering, this is kind of funky, and seeing the extra Oracle is a really nice sell from Gerald on like, oh, I'm just playing standard. Like, don't look at the man behind the curtain. You know, like this is normal stuff. Don't panic. Don't think there's anything weird.
I mean,
But-
I'm obviously a very big fan of the Phoenixes, but Phoenixes against +1 melee is somewhat dicey. It doesn't have to be a disaster because he does have the Void Ray, he does still have the 2 Oracles. You really can't lose the 2 Oracles. Seeing this amount of links may be a bit of a tell already for Gerald, but like the Twilight Council is only going down now. Bailing Nest is finishing up. It is going to be somewhat tough for Gerald not to take any damage from all the links and potential Banelings as well when +1 is done, or even +2 down the line.
Yeah, I think if it had been that big commitment on the third base with, you know, around 40 to 50, well, probably around 50 drones, there would have been a pretty difficult time holding that, especially since he didn't really have his oracles in the greatest position. But we didn't see that. We see Rattata, you know, just continuing to drone up. He is going into that bailing speed. Like you said, it will be the +2 melee from there. And now we're going to have an interesting response here. It's going to be Hydraling Bane. This is something we do not see often, but against this Phoenix play, it is going to be a pretty strong response.
Yeah, I think it's very good. It is indeed not a very common build anymore, but it is very good against what Gerald is doing in this particular game. Gerald is going to have some issues dealing with these Banelings as he's not pulling the probes yet. He's finding a bit of damage on the other side of the map, apparently, with the Phoenixes. That's nice and all. But if you lose 12 probes, that's a lot more painful than killing 5 drones, especially because Rattata is already on 4 hatcheries, still has 69 drones to work with. I am not feeling this game at all for Gerald, but maybe the Phoenixes can slowly but steady bring him back into it. But one of the downsides of lifting too many drones is that if you get pushed by Hydraling Bane, you're not going to have that many lifts available. And Phoenixes can be good in overwhelming numbers, but he's clearly trying to transition out of it at this point. And Rattata's like, all right, mate, you deal some damage to me. I have the feeling I'm going to deal way more damage to you. As more slow Banelings, but there are about to be speed Banelings, will come in here. Stasis traps will go down, so that can provide some safety. But there is still no way to deal with all these Banes. These probes are stuck. The probes are stuck. 2 Banelings get decent connections, but no shield batteries to work with anymore. I am very, very concerned for Gerald in this game.
I am too. If it wasn't for that stasis ward on the right side catching about 20 of those lings, 15, 20 of those lings, I think we're looking at a hell of a lot more than 6 probes dead. I think we're looking at about 15 probes dead. But Rattata able to, well, okay, no, he doesn't go back in here. Nice re-wall with that Adept. Good job, but this is such a scary situation for Gerald. Rattata's been all over him, and this has just been harassment. This has not even been the official commitment to the push, which will be coming down pretty soon.
Okay, Rattata does need to be careful. You don't want to lose Hydras one by one, but it's actually turning into an alright trade. I think he lost 2 Hydras there, but kills a Phoenix. Like, even when Gerald has Storm here, I am not terrified for Rattata at all, because the only thing you really have are those Storms. The Storm is really good in softening up an army. It's not that good in straight up winning a fight. He's going to need some of the best Storms and then maybe a very good battery overcharge. I do like all the cannons. I think that's like the only way that he can really potentially hang in there, but this is going to be pretty tough. It does look like we have a lot of Protoss here actually, so army supply definitely doesn't look too dicey, and maybe with a good overcharge it will be alright. But we do need to make up our mind when we finally want to fight. We do have 1 Storm there. It's actually a pretty decent little Storm. That Archon does go down, though, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, this is still going to be a very expensive cleanup. It should be a cleanup, but it cost him, I think, almost all of his High Templar. No, it did cost him all of his High Templar. There was a cute little move where Gerald was about to lose one of his High Templar, and he actually lifted it up to save it in order to be able to drop another Storm. Cute little micro trick. Unfortunately, it is still like Rattata's not going to stop doing this until either Gerald can fully stabilize or until he's dead. And it's looking like it's going to be really tough to try and stabilize. Stasis ward gets a couple of units, not enough though.
No, I mean, the 4th base is super exposed too. I do feel like it was a bit of an anti-timing for Rattata because a lot of the Hydra upgrades were not quite done yet. This one should be a bit more powerful. This time around, the Banelings have +2 as well. So once those connect with the probes, Gerald is in all sorts of trouble. And this is kind of what I meant before, where he's got an army that's like somewhat decent in like zoning out some units, but he doesn't have a great let's just kind of fight army. It's a bunch of phoenixes in the air that will once more clean up most of the hydras. But do we have an answer for all these lings that are now going to town on the Nexus? I am afraid that the answer is no. The Void Ray is not really able to accomplish a whole lot. We have one cannon, one morphing Archon here, but these lings have +2. They are feisty lings, and I kind of feel that Gerald is just getting completely overrun here by the Swarm.
Yeah, exactly. Even if there was enough Phoenix Lifts to deal with this set of lings, you wouldn't have enough to deal with, you know, the constant flood of lings. And I don't think he's ever going to be able to get up a standing ground army that can properly contest this. And now we've got a Protoss on 2 bases versus a Rattata that was taking a 5th. And the GG, it's going to get called. We have a strong showing from Rattata in game number 1. And Gerald with a build that's maybe a little bit too fancy. You talk about overcomplicating it. I think that's what we saw.
Yeah, this was indeed very complicated. I have a headache when I even think of all the things that he was going for. Now, it would work out maybe if he gets a bit more success with the Adepts early on. He's able to get the Nexus down the first time around, and then we get some static defenses up, and maybe it all just flows a little bit better. But when we invest that much in 2 Oracles, a Void Ray, all those Phoenixes, but then we also go into Storm, what we're basically playing is like Storm static defense. Like, that's what it is, because yeah, a couple of Zealots, what are those going to do? They're going to run into Banelings, or you're going to deal damage to those Zealots yourself. Zealot Phoenix is all right, but not against Hydra Link Bane, so then we also need some Archons, but we can't do it all. We can't have a crazy amount of Phoenix and Storm and Archons and Zealots and static defenses. It's just, I feel that Gerald was trying to do a few too many things at once there.
Yeah, I think so. And Rattata was... Maybe he gets away with it if he, you know, doesn't take all that damage. But Rattata was constantly, you know, sending small squads of Ling Bane in and getting good damage with it. And it constantly kept Gerald on the back foot while Rattata was really getting that explosive economy. And even though, you know, Phoenix has got a little bit of damage on the other side, it didn't equate to the amount that he did. And even if it did, Rattata was always going to be able to rebuild just a little bit faster.
That first Baneling run by was very painful, because that is a phase in the game where you really can't afford to lose 12 probes. Like, if that would have happened a bit later, if Gerald already had his sweet setup and 70+ workers, then I feel like we can kind of recover. But this one hit pretty early, and you're like, yeah, I killed 5 drones. It's like, oh no, I lost 12 probes. That's actually a lot more painful. Well, let's see what game 2 has in store for us, as we have loaded into Curious Minds. In the bottom right side, we are looking at the main base of the Polish Protoss, representing Storm Gaming. It is Gerald.
And his opponent, spawning up the top left for Good Game Gaming, it is Rattata. Yeah, it's it almost feels like Gerald wasn't too comfortable on 2000 Atmospheres. It feels like that's the kind of build that you go for if you're trying to catch your opponent off guard, if you don't necessarily feel that comfortable. I was talking about prep a little bit in the the pre-show of this series, and I was expecting something a little bit funky, but that was like really, really funky. Oh, he does it again with the gas block. Cute little move. It's relatively inconsequential, but it's such a little, I think flick on the ear really is the best way of describing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cute, but Gerald obviously needs to just make sure that whatever he has in store for us here, it all flows a little bit better. And sometimes I just really wish that he would play slightly easier StarCraft, because he's clearly very good. And if I think of a lot of the great PvPs that I've seen of him over the last few months, it's often where I feel like he has his opponent on the ropes, and then instead of ending it with just warping in 10 more Stalkers or sending a Prism into the main, warping in a few Zealots, he's like, no, we're gonna go for the double Robo, we'll go to take another base, get a couple of cannons and batteries, and he kind of opens the door for potential comebacks of his opponents, where, sometimes when get further ahead is cute, but I think when it's for all the marbles, especially in the playoffs of the DreamHack Masters, if we can win, we should just win. But it also makes sense that right now he's just going for the builds that he has been practicing the most. And let's see what that is going to be. Curious Minds, I think, is a very difficult map, where I feel like 2K is normally a map where Gerald actually kind of shines. So I'd be surprised if he was not confident on 2K Atmosphere. On this one, I kind of feel like we need to rely on some sort of timing attack, or at least really be in the face of our opponent, because just sitting at home I think is very difficult on Curious.
Yeah, it's a lot of wide open areas for Zerg players to take engagements. It's a very short rush distance map, which traditionally you think of as not great for Zerg, but in the ZVP matchup, it's pretty darn good for the Zerg. A lot of positions to run banelings in on, bases. It's just not a comfortable map really for Protoss. Losing that early scouting probe as well, it's not a huge deal, but it is one of those things where you're like, well, crap, that wasn't supposed to happen. You've already had, your game plan come unraveled in game number 1, and then you lose that probe, and you're just... I don't think of Gerald as a player that tilts easily, but it's certainly not a comfortable start.
I also think that Gerald maybe got a bit unfortunate, right? Where he made the Oracle into the Void Ray, and then the Void Ray picked off the Overlord, and then he was secretly going into Phoenix. Then ideally what you hope for is that your opponent makes a couple of roaches or 50 drones and kind of slows down their own economy. But yeah, Rattata was doing none of that. He was going for +1 Zerglings and then just skip the Roach one altogether, went straight into the Hydras, and that's not what you want to deal with if you go for the build that Gerald went for. So maybe it was a bit of unfortunate as well, where he tried to sell something, but Rattata just didn't fall for it. And build order-wise, like, those are not builds that line up very nicely for Gerald. So maybe in game 2 everything will just go a whole lot better for him, because he did have a great showing in the group stage, man. 5-2 is very impressive, because that was a tough group as well. And this Oracle is finding quite some success, forcing 1 extra drone to morph into a Spore Crawler. We don't want to take too much damage on it, but killing 3 drones this quickly is quite lovely.
Yeah, that's really, really good. He was looking to try and force a cancel on that Spore so he could get the kill. It's funny, I was actually just going to mention the build that we're seeing from Gerald. If we had seen it in game number 1, as the Oracle gets back in, looks like another drone. No, I actually didn't get anything, so good defense right there from Rattata. If we had seen this build on 2K Atmos with no Roach Warren, it would have been such a good situation for Gerald. This big resonating glaives follow-up, 4-gate glaives after the Oracles, after the 3rd base, would have been a really, really good spot. Oh, the Adepts out of position right here are going to get surrounded by these Zerglings. That's a really annoying loss. He's even going to lose a 3rd Adept here. Normally this is pretty bad, but when you're going for that Glaive Adept follow-up, this is kind of disastrous.
Yep, and now we're going to lose the pylon, so that warping gets cancelled too. I mean, this is all very unnecessary. If those 2 adepts were just tucked in between the pylon and the mineral patch, maybe we lose one, maybe we even lose both, but at the cost of all of those links. Gerald, that's a shame, right? Because you have a solid start, you pick up a couple drones with your first Oracle, and you're like, all right, I have a good idea what's going on. I'm going to follow it up with a timing where I am going to be in his face. And now instead we lose some of the momentum. At this point he's a bit scared, so he's keeping the Oracles at home. He does not have any vision out on the map. And if you don't have any vision, you don't know that Rattata is now already building a lot of roaches and lings. And I have the feeling it's a few more than you would normally make just to deal with these adepts. Or perhaps Rattata is just going to try to play it very safe and make sure he's got enough roaches in every single position.
Yeah, this feels like it was going to be a really aggressive attack from Rattata, but this is like the perfect setup for him, really. Gonna not be able to get anything done with these lings, but already pushing the Adepts back. And honestly, I'm pretty scared for Gerald right now in game number 2 already. This is not the greatest situation for him. We are seeing Rattata drone up behind us. And, okay, he's going to cancel or at least deny the 4th base for a little bit. But now the Adept Shade is on cooldown. A couple of roaches might be able to get some pickoffs on these Adepts.
Yeah. I mean, this is obviously not exactly what we hope for when we make this many Adepts and Resonating Glaives, but he did force out a lot of units, and if we don't just throw them away, as we did try to get lucky, shade a couple of Adepts into the natural, I want to say it would have been okay. Now we misfired, we shot at the gas, but we are going to go for a couple of drones and decide to recall the remaining Adepts home. I mean, if enough time goes by and that RoboBay finishes up and we get a couple of Disruptors out, it's all pretty playable. It definitely is not disastrous. Work account looks great. So that part is obviously lovely on the side of Gerald, and now it's just important that we don't take any damage. I kind of wonder where Rattata is going this game, to be totally honest, because he has made way more units than I expected him to make. But then he just kind of went back into droning, and he's like, no, I'm just going to be safe against the Adepts. Economically, he definitely fell a little bit behind in this one.
Yeah, it is a weird situation. It feels like he's expecting like an all-in or something. I don't know what else it could be. He also hasn't built roach speed, which is actually a pretty disastrous, oversight. And he just got himself a little bit supply blocked right there. A couple of kind of unnecessary missteps, but Rattata, I feel like, is still pretty... Well, I mean, he should be in the driver's seat. The only thing is that if, Gerald manages to get up to, let's say, 4 disruptors, and Rattata hasn't attacked before that point, I'm actually very scared for Rattata's position.
Yeah, roach speed, not having roach speed is just disastrous. I know he's got a lot of Ravagers, and maybe those don't care too much, but all of these roaches off trip are going to be very underwhelming. And he's going to run into a Gerald that I feel is a lot more prepared than the previous game. I even like the Void Ray that Gerald just made, just to have some consistent DPS on these Ravagers, on these roaches. Here we go, slow roaches off trip. Good luck splitting those against Disruptors. I mean, this is honestly looking very promising, as we do almost lose the Void Ray. We don't want to lose the Void Ray. I made. That's a bit unnecessary, but I still think it's a very doable hold, especially with the stasis traps and the batteries.
Oh, nice job right there from Gerald. He waited to use that disruptor shot for when the Ravagers would pop, and ends up getting, the full extra resource kill instead of getting just the cancel cost and giving a little bit of money back to Rattata. So nice job right there from Gerald. We are going to see a rotation from Rattata, but the stasis ward is huge right there. Very nice, getting a lot of those Zerglings. The Sim City of Gerald is pretty good as well. It forces Rattata to just come in from one side. Disruptors. Oh, nice last second split.
Yep, nice play, but this is kind of it for Rattata. He does need a great fight here. He does get on top of the Disruptors. The Nova still go off, though. They're getting decent connections. The Stalkers, they do feel like they are kind of exposed, right? If those Stalkers get surrounded by the Lynx, it is disastrous for Gerald, who has a lot of money, but he's just not able to spend it. Had a lot of probes, but he's about to lose 18. Oh, I feel like this all could have been handled a little bit better. Maybe getting a bit too carried away, trying to defend all 4 bases there at once. We do have a little battery overcharge. Kind of all we have, as a roach speed is finally going to finish up 10 minutes into the game. Stalkers near batteries, near high ground, choke points should be good enough to make the difference, especially if Von Nova connects in a big way, and it does.
It does, but are we past the tipping point right now? This is looking very, very scary for Gerald. He is going to warp in some DTs and will buy himself a little bit of time. The thing is, if Gerald can stabilize, he's still very much in this game. Rattata's on just 64 drones. This is still absolutely, an all-in position from Rattata. But he is... Oh, Disruptor! Oh!
We don't need to lose. Yeah, we don't need to lose him like that. 2 Disruptors get picked off immediately. The other one gets surrounded. No battery overcharge. So just when we have 3 Disruptors in an Archon, we lose all of those key units. And what should have been a very doable hold is now going to be a bit of a nightmare, especially with a couple of Lynx running into the main base. More Baylings showing up. Oh, Gerald, matey. I actually thought that he was in that sweet spot that you were talking about, where it started to look quite promising. Does land one over there, but look at the amount of workers that have gone down. 33. The Lynx in the main base are still having a good old time, and these are very feisty Zerglings with +2 melee. One more battery overcharge is going to buy some time, but all the probes at the 4th base are very exposed. We're losing pylons at this point. Unnecessary, really unnecessary here for Gerald, where I felt that he was in a mighty fine spot, but just not quite able to get it all together. Look at the Lynx in the natural, no response there. 42 workers go down, and Rattata takes the 2-0 lead in this best of 5.
Yeah, that was another situation where things kind of came apart at the seams a little bit there for Gerald. There was a couple of situations where I felt like, he was in a really good position to hold and stabilize and really maybe even just run away with the game there. But unfortunately, just a couple of missteps. Disruptor's not positioned as well as he needed them to be. He took a lot of fights in very wide open areas, never really broke up positions. The stasis wards in the first little area, first couple of engagements were pretty useful. But he needed them, I think, to consistently be getting thrown down. And that felt like another situation where things were maybe a little bit needlessly complicated because he, made it such that he was fighting in so many different spots at once.
Yeah, economically, the game was actually looking really good for Gerald at one point. And then you look at the units that they were working with. It's like, man, he's got Disruptors out. He's got a Dark Shrine finishing up. Losing that Void Ray as well against just a couple of Ravages. Like, that stuff can happen. It's probably a bit of the nerfs coming into play. But imagine for the entirety of that fight, and that went on for quite some time, you have a Void Ray just chipping away at Ravages. Maybe every now and then activating Prismatic Alignment, going to town on some Roaches. It was really doable for Gerald to hold there. Also, when the very first attack started of Rattata, I think we got up to like 1,200 minerals at one point. And that's just a few too many, right? Imagine 3 extra cannons, 2 batteries powering those cannons. Your Blink Stalkers are going to have the time of their life, just blinking back one by one while having that consistent DPS. It's a shame. It's a real shame for Gerald because obviously playoffs is a very big deal. Did not make playoffs a single time last year. Made it 3 times in 2020 and had a good group stage. And I feel like right now we're not seeing the best of Gerald.
Yeah, it's definitely a kind of scary situation and a bit of an unfortunate one because I feel like he's always been pretty good, if not great, at the ground Protoss style. But it feels like Rattata, for one, I mean, he's kind of had a bit of a soul read on Gerald, or at least, if not a soul read, he's been very fortunate with the way the builds have, paired up against one another. We had the kind of disastrous situation in game number 1 with the +1 melee Lings versus Phoenixes. And then again in game 2, we have Rattata going for a bunch of Roaches versus that early Adept attack. So both like early games going pretty advantageously for Rattata. Mm-hmm. It's a tough situation. Yeah. And Gerald needs a big win. I mean, obviously he needs a win in the game, but he needs a win in terms of momentum.
The adepts were obviously not great, right? Like, they didn't accomplish a whole lot. They found a couple of drones here and there, but in the end, we lost most of them without getting too much done. But Gerald's macro at home at that point was actually very solid. So without killing a whole lot, he was technically in a good spot. And then you look at the units he was working with, the units that Rattata was working with. I'm like, man, this is all still very doable, very playable. We just need to make sure we don't completely fall apart against the aggression. And slowly but steady, unfortunately, we kind of did. So this is it. In the bottom left side of Blackburn, we're looking at the main base of the man who is now 1 map away from making it into the top 12 of the most prestigious online European event. He's done that before in his career, but this would be the first time in a while. It is Rattata.
And his opponent, spotting down to the bottom right for Storm Gaming. He needs your energy. Can he twirl his mustache out of this one? It is Storm Gaming's Gerald.
I mean, we're not going to have 2 days in a row where we kick things off with a 3-0 now, are we, Steadfast?
We can't. It can't happen. It's impossible. The odds of this are astronomical, and I refuse to accept that it's going to happen. I think Gerald is going to be able to bring things back here. It's tough because even if you do have a good mindset, going down 2-0 in a series is never a comfortable feeling. And having it where both games, you have a bit of not a build order counter, but definitely a build order slight disadvantage, if not, pretty significant disadvantage, I would say, in game number 1. Having that, it feels almost like the cards are stacked against you a little bit, and you gotta shake it off. You gotta come out. What do you do in Gerald's situation? Do you just play pure standard and just be like, you know what? No, I'm the better player, or do you try and do something kind of funky again?
I think just once more what you have been preparing, right? We know that these guys take these best of 5s incredibly serious. They have done their homework. They watch a couple of VODs and replays from their opponent, analyze it, and think of styles that should potentially match up against whoever they are facing. So I don't think that Gerald now, because he's down 0-2, is like, all right, whatever I have planned, it doesn't work. Because I think the first game may be a little bit unlucky. You try to be cheeky with the Phoenixes, but then your opponent doesn't make any Roaches. They just go +1 Lings and Banelings and make a Hydra Ling Bane attack, which is not that common. Just happens to be very good against Phoenixes. That's like, all right, that happens. Unfortunate. Second game, though, like if you resume that from replay at one point, where it's like, man, if Gerald just gets a few cannons, batteries, and he knows that the aggression is coming, not just because it is Rattata, but also because of everything that he saw up to that point, he could have been fine. With slightly better execution, better defenses, he would have been all right. So I don't think he's necessarily losing because of the strats. I think he's just losing on execution at this point. And that's not even because I think Rattata is playing out of his mind great. It's more that Gerald is just maybe crumbling under the pressure a little bit.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a pretty good analysis of the situation. I think that says all it needs to say. For me, I think I would like to see Gerald just, play triple Oracle, go for... I don't know how experienced he is with the hero style with that 4-gas setup, but I think that it really would work well with the way that he approaches the game. So I hope we'll see that a little bit. Oh, another nice pickoff right here from Rattata, grabbing that probe right as Gerald wants to take the base. And this time we're not going to see 3-4 drones going down in the early game. We are going to see a much better defense from Rattata.
This is lovely, though. Really good link movement by Rattata. Gets the second probe kill as well. I mean, that probe was literally behind the Stalker, but somehow the link still manages to squeeze through. And these are not the things that you are looking for. At this point, you kind of wish that your Nexus was 35% done. Instead, you're only warping it in now. And this wasn't the biggest investment by Rattata, though. It's just a couple of links, making sure that you know what's happening on the other side of the map. And if you can be annoying, that's lovely. These Oracles, though, they do find a little opening, grabbing 3 drones, but that's a lot of damage on one of these Oracles. But as long as we keep them alive, that's all acceptable.
Yeah,
wow.
The damage is fine. Oh my god, double expansion. 445 coming on in. What? Okay, well, this is mixing things up a hell of a lot.
Yep. Kind of gives us the feeling that Gerald just wants to get 1 million Blink Stalkers and maybe followed up with Zealots, right? Because obviously if we get our hands on the gold, we can get some quick +1. And sometimes pure Stalker Zealot can actually be good enough against Zerg. It shouldn't be on paper, or in theory. But if you just have a way stronger economy, you get a couple of good trades on your side of the map, your opponent is not quite aware of what's happening. Yeah, I can see this working. This is definitely a bit adventurous, but I don't hate it. Rattata is also going up to 4 bases very quickly, though. And look at that wall-off, man. A wall-off all the way on the top side of Blackburn. I mean, this is quite something.
I actually love that. I think that's such a cool approach because it's going to mean that he doesn't have to worry about, Ling, Bane, run-bys coming up through that top side. He puts a cannon or 2 behind that, maybe a cannon and a battery, or maybe even just 2 cannons. That's going to be extremely difficult or expensive to break for Rattata. I am really, really liking this setup, and the Zergling does now scout the gold base, but this is a really, really cool approach to me from Gerald.
A couple of adapts are going to shade into the base at 9 o'clock and should be able to grab, well, if we target fire correctly, we get 1 more 4 drones in total. That's all right. Losing the Oracles would be disastrous here because it seems that Rattata is obviously picked up on what Gerald is doing. The only thing he doesn't know yet is about the crazy wall-off in the top right side. But if Rattata is just going to try to overwhelm Gerald with nothing but Ling, Bane, Roach, having 3 Oracles with a lot of energy on your side of the map is going to be absolutely godlike. Like, I don't mind a revelation here and there and picking up a couple of 3 tumors, but I would also say just keep these Oracles alive and make sure you have a lot of energy, because Pulsar Beam is going to be great against everything that Rattata is working with at the moment.
This is a wild follow-up, by the way, from Gerald here. So I thought he was going to be playing basically the pure hero style where you stay on, 4 gases. You go for... let's say 10 gateways, you get blink, you get charge, you get a really fast +2. Sometimes you even get a double forge to go double upgrades in this match. Oh, there's no cannon. Why? Oh, I'm not the biggest fan of this then. Okay, well, he does warp in a couple of depths. We'll be able to protect that, but still, I would have loved to have seen at least 1 cannon. Like, you don't want to have to keep warping in units there, or even really keep units there, because it means, you can't F2 your army. You have to potentially babysit that a little bit. But the double Robo Disruptor follow-up is a very bold tech follow-up, considering how greedy he's already played.
Gerald absolutely loves the Disruptors in multiple matchups, and even when it feels like he doesn't have to, he will still transition into them. I mean, if you would normally just pause this game and you'd be like, well, 75 probes for the Protoss, has a nice little wall-off, he's even going up to 5 bases. This all looks promising. The Ravages are going to be a bit annoying, but this is where I thought having a bunch of energy on your Oracles would be absolutely fantastic. Please pull your probes. He pulls them at the last moment. So we are definitely going to lose a couple here, but I feel like this shouldn't be too disastrous. It's annoying, but not... Okay, we're having only 1 pylon powering 4 gateways. that is actually a little bit dicey, because if we lose these gates or we lose that pylon, man, he's just going to lose everything almost. The Oracles are trying to do whatever they can, starting to work on the Ravages, but this is where Gerald just spent so much money on that double Robo, on that Robo Bay, on the Dark Shrine, and none of that has really come into play yet.
Yeah, and he will push this army back, and he's going to get a pretty decent trade. Oh, need to dodge the Biles. Actually, Rattata just stepped into his own Biles, I think, right there. This is still... Oh.
Sorry, I
heard a gasp.
Yeah, because he moved the adepts away for a split second. I was like, no, don't open the gates. But then he repositioned the adepts, and Rattata was actually going to morph the Lings into Banelings anyway. Yeah, the corrosive balls into the Zerg army. That's obviously something you'd love to see. Gerald had a lot of money in the bank because his gateways were unpowered. Here come those Banelings. By the way, they do open the floodgates a little bit. Now, if we lose... No, don't flop.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. This could have been really bad. But in the end, it's a very good save. A couple of Lings in the main base don't do a whole lot. But now look at the third. That is a ridiculous amount of Lings, Roaches, Ravages, and more Banelings finishing up as well. Gerald has so much money once more, and he is just not able to spend it.
Well, he certainly is, and I said it was a ridiculous concept to predict a 3-0, but it looks like maybe I should have gone that direction because, the Disruptor shot? No, it's not going to be enough. He's going to lose this third Nexus. Gold base will stay alive for a while. Oh, great split out of Rattata. That was very, very nice. Gerald, he is on the ropes right now. He needs to find a way to stabilize, and I don't know how he does it.
Well, I still kind of feel like if he would be able to spend all his money, and he absolutely should have indeed gone for a cannon and a battery. Like, 4 gateways is nice as a wall-off, but you definitely don't want to lose it, right? As we're going to fire a few more Novas. If Gerald can hang in for this game another minute, and he can just spend that bank that he's been working with, take one good fight with the Blinky boys, one big Nova, he's absolutely far from out of it, but it is important that from here on out we are going to be very, very clean. Because Rattata does play a very committed style. I don't want to call everything in all in. I love the 2 Ravages still on the left side of the gold. Here we go. That Nova is decent. What happened to the Oracles, by the way? Seems like we lost one, I guess, to a corrosive bomb. That's a good Nova, though.
That is a huge Nova, and that's the kind of thing he needed right there. That broke a lot of the power of this army. Lings and Bane still going to flood on forward. We are going to see the battery overcharge staying alive. It does get depowered, though,
which is a really
big problem.
Like, this is where you use the Prism. I know there's still a couple of Ravages in the mix, but if you would have just used the Prism there immediately to power that battery overcharge, that would have really helped. The Novas are still pretty damn good, and Gerald will be able to hang in there just a bit longer, as he's also rebuilding the Nexus that he lost earlier. Down 22 workers, but tech-wise, he's in an alright spot. 10 gateways, double Robo, and a Dark Shrine, and a Robo Bay. That doesn't look too bad against Lair Tech Zerg.
Yeah, and he's able to, he kept all of his Nexi alive, so he was able to pump out 5 probes at a time. 5 probes being chrono boosted from 5 Nexi. You rebuild your worker count damn quick. Now, you are correct. Rattata plays a very committed style. And, ooh, nice spot on the DT right here. Yeah, good pickoff. But, this is... I really wish Rattata would actually tech up into, at least into Hive right now. Maybe add on a couple of Vipers. Disruptor going to trap these units at the top. The Stalkers, they do get surrounded, but they can blink their way out of this.
Yeah, we are going to lose a couple, though, by the looks of it. Nice pickup still with the War Prism. It's very cool that he has been able to keep that War Prism around and still save the Disruptors whenever they get in a very dicey spot. And yeah, I do feel that this game looks a whole lot worse for Rattata now than it did a little while ago. He could still just take one good fight, land a couple of corrosive balls, get a Lynx around, and maybe it's going to be all right. But he needs more than he's been getting. In that last attack, does find one Disrupted. That's decent. But the man needs more because that army of Gerald is growing. And without Hive, without Vipers, it's going to get very hard to deal with it. This could be a decent fight for the Zerg, as the Lings are definitely doing what they're supposed to do. Nice pickup on at least one of the Disruptors. And even with just Blink Stalkers alone, I think Gerald should be fine here, as long as the micro is alright.
Something we haven't mentioned, Gerald never got +2 weapons. He's only on +1 on these Stalkers, so they do not pack the punch that we are used to seeing them pack in this situation. Disruptor shot is going to come on forward. Another decent pre-split from Rattata. Still gets an okay connection. Oh, good hot pickup on that Disruptor. But this is such a chaotic game. But finally, Gerald is starting to find his footing, has evened up the supply, and will be able to get the Zealot Warpins to deal with these Zerglings. I think he loses a Disruptor right there, but he has broken the power of this push, and he is finally going to find some momentum in this series.
Yep, and now he's able to chase his army down. Even the Phoenix is lifting one of the Ravages. And the Rattata probably wondering, like, what the hell? I thought I pretty much had this. At one point, I was completely over your third. You didn't really have a whole lot to work with. I took a split moment for myself, and suddenly your army was way bigger and way more powerful than it was supposed to be. That's because a lot of those resources Gerald wasn't able to spend earlier, since the gateways were unpowered and whatnot. At this point, the Polish Protoss really is in a good spot. A very important game for him, of course, with the tournament live on the line. Rattata is going to try to sneak out +2 melee, but that's a whole lot later than it was in some of the previous games. Banelings is very casually running into the Protoss army. Does open an opportunity for his main army in the top side to find some success, but that's expensive, man. Rattata does not have the economy to casually throw away 12 Banelings at a time.
No, he does not, and there's only one Overseer with this army. If that gets picked off, DTs could be very useful on the defense. We have the Phoenix kind of going after it. This is going to be a really big commitment from Rattata here. And Gerald looking to surround the army from two sides. We do see Banelings rolling in on this third base. Oh, nice little split from Rattata right there. Or pardon me, from Gerald. But Rattata, I think he's really overcommitted right here. He's going to lose all these roaches.
Yeah, I mean, he ran himself into the tiniest of corners in the top right side, surrounded by Protoss bases. Gerald's so happy with all of that he started shooting at his own Phoenix there for a little while. I'm not exactly sure the Phoenix truly deserved that. I mean, Rattata just tried to create as much chaos as possible to hopefully find critical amounts of economic damage. He didn't. He found 16 probes and killed 64 throughout the game. But that still is not good enough, because Gerald has been on those 5 bases. The floodgates are open, though. There is nothing here. Oh, yeah, there's not even a shield battery, but this army is also going to fall, because, like, Rattata, there's no way home. So at this point, you just hope you kill almost everything. Oh, Disruptor does come out, lands a little Nova. This is also not good enough for Rattata. Sure, it's chaotic. It's going to find some damage, but that's a sick Disruptor hit on the majority of the links. And once more, we are going to lose each and every single Zerg unit we have committed to this attack.
15 kills on that Disruptor, and it survived. Gerald, yeah, he loses a fair number of probes right here, but he has been on a lower probe count in this game and a much, much scarier situation. I think at this point, if he just goes across the map, battens down the hatches, maybe drops a couple of cannons in some of his exposed bases, and as he pushes out, I really don't know how Rattata is supposed to hold an attack like this. This is a great turnaround coming in from Gerald.
I don't think he will. With DTs running into the gold base, DTs are looking for something in the top left as well. These Novas, ooh, that's so scary, by the way, firing a Nova through those slow zones. But that final Nova is actually going to connect in a very sweet way. This time around, it's Gerald who's finding some economic damage. He's been waiting for this for a long time. DT should be able to kill that base in the top left side. As long as we don't lose all of our gateway units and all the Disruptors at once, it does seem that the Polish Protoss is going to hang in here a little bit longer, and at least is going to force out a game 4. And that is honestly quite spectacular, because at one point, it felt that he was in a very dire spot here on Blackburn.
Oh, he certainly was, and this is exact... Ooh. Oh, big corrosive biles right there. Just kind of a a little bit of a parting shot right there from Rattata, saying, you know what, it's still gonna leave a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth even in victory. But I have got to say, that is a huge confidence builder for Gerald right there. I think we're gonna go to a quick little break between the series here, or well, between games here. But we will be back with game number 4 in just a little bit. Welcome back, everyone. We are back. Hope you stretched your legs, got some snacks, because we are going to have another match on our hands. Fortunately, I managed to mid-game curse the 3-0 curse that I had previously cursed. I don't know how deep it goes, but Inception is a movie that I did enjoy. But it is going to be Berlingrad here. Can Gerald keep up the momentum, or is Rattata going to shut him down?
I would love to see a game 5. Yesterday, the only series that went all 5 games was definitely the highlight of the day. So perhaps this one is just getting started. In the bottom right side, we're looking at the main base of the man who had to get his hopes up at one point that was it, and that he already secured his ticket into the top 12. Instead, he's going to have to do it all over again here on Berlingrad, but he's still enjoying a 2-1 lead. It is the red Zerg player, Rattata.
And his opponent looking to rally back from the brink of defeat. It is the Psystorm Gaming Protoss, Gerald of Poland. That's a pretty huge swing of momentum, potentially. Like, I don't want to call it too early because, it's only game 4. But that is the kind of thing that can really give you that big confidence boost. And it was, it was just a straight up slugfest, an execution war, a battle. Now, you can say that Gerald got a good build order and his economy was absolutely roaring, but that isn't really what decided that game. It was his ability to, prevent Rattata from actually just outright killing him. And you mentioned it, he was able to spend his resources eventually. He did put himself into a bit of a tough position by getting those warp gates depowered, and that's something that I hope we don't see again on this map, but it was a really, really nice comeback.
Yeah, for sure. Being able to hang in there where at one point you feel like, all right, there are a couple of links in my main, there are a couple of links in the natural, and then you can perhaps send too many units to deal with that because you're worried that you're going to lose everything or that important structures are going to be depowered. You lose the third, all the probes. It almost feels like they stuck, but he was able to save quite a few of them. And even though at one point he lost 65 workers, he was always within 10 to 15 workers of his opponent, and sometimes even able to tie things up completely and spread over 5 bases. So it's not like, yay, we have 72 probes, but we're stuck on 3 bases. No, he had those 5 bases. I think he did a very good job in not losing the probes over and over again at the gold, even though those were the ones that were most exposed. But I think Rattata tried, but Gerald actually did a good job of keeping an eye on those Ravagers and making sure we never had the devastating corrosive balls that just took out an entire mineral line over and over again. This is the fun game and a really good comeback. Just great fighting spirit overall by the Polish Protoss. We're going to switch things up a little bit here, by the way, and we're going to kick things off with a Twilight Council.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a mix-up, and it's still good. We could see Resonating Glaives, and I would say for the most part, that's the more likely play on Berlingrad. But since it's Gerald, there is always the opportunity that it could be a DT drop for, so much of his career, probably 2 years, I would say, of his career. This was about the only build he did in this matchup was, warp in some DTs, try and get some damage done, but more so than anything, you're going for the Archon drop as the follow-up and just, take a bit of control in this matchup. And in the last couple of weeks, he's been doing this a little bit more.
No, it's kind of weird so far because the Twilight Council is done. We haven't dropped the Dark Shrine. Okay, there we go. It's perhaps, I want to say, a little bit later than it's supposed to be, but maybe in the end it all works out because he, of course, still needs to get the extra gateways and he needs to get the War Prism. So DTs it will be. It's very important for Rattata that he eventually catches onto this. Like, you don't have to get ready for it immediately. You don't want to build Spore Crawlers right now. That just be way too early. But you also don't want to find yourself in a position where you don't have a lair and you only have a Spore in 1 out of 3 bases or something along those lines. So let's see. I like the move out with the adapts because now you're kind of forcing the links back, and that makes it a bit more of a guessing game for the Zerg player.
Yeah, it certainly does. We are going to be seeing the DT or Spore Crawlers in the main and the natural, so he might still be reading this as Oracles potentially, because I mean, you absolutely always put it down at the third. Okay, he scouts the War Prism right there. That is really big, and he starts up that third Spore. If he doesn't see that War Prism with these lings, he could have actually just straight up lost the game, like right here.
Yep, because imagine if Gerald just sends in 3 DTs, right? And maybe a Spore Crawler could run over from the natural into the third. Now, the Link's finding a lot of success, though, getting the kill on both of the Adapts and the Pylon. And that Spore Crawler is done. Will we fight? Yeah, it's always a bit ambitious to take a fight like this. So careful. You have to be so careful with your Warp Prism. 1 DT went down there, by the looks of it. I mean, that's very pricey. It all could have been pretty good for Gerald. And then fast forward 45 seconds, we're like, well, actually, nothing went his way. Lost the Pylon, lost the Adapts, lost the DT. Didn't find a lot of damage with the Dark Templars initially.
Yeah, that was the worst of all cases, really, for him. The only thing that could have been worse is if he lost the War Prism and all 3 DTs. And at that point, you're talking about, like, how does he even recover in the game? As it is, he's in a rough spot, but it's not over yet. That being said, I don't envy his position for sure. I don't blame him for going in, but he was a little bit too long on the commitment right here. We will see an Archon being able to deal with this. The thing that really sucks about this, though, is that you have to warp in at an extra DT in order to go for, you know, the continued harassment with the double Archon drop. And that's not cheap. Like, every resource really does count in this early game.
Oh my goodness, that Archon is actually not done yet, but the Warp Prism should be able to save it. That could have been a disaster if those links would have shown up a second earlier. Instead, it will live. We're warping in more DTs right now. Where is he doing that?
I think he's hiding them. Maybe, yeah, he's hiding them in the natural. So I think this is going to be a big commitment from Gerald here. Even another DT. Yeah, this is just going to be a big Charge Lot Archon Immortal push. No Forge coming on down. Yeah. Now, this is the kind of push that if you're not prepared for as the Zerg, it can really catch you off guard.
The thing is, I feel like Rattata on 64 drones on Burning-Rat, when he also knows that his opponent doesn't have a crazy economy, this is not the kind of Zerg that's going to be like, all right, 5 bases, 85 drones, Hive. Like, no, Rattata is going to make Roaches, Lings, and Banes at this point. He does fire up 7 more drones, though, so maybe I spoke too soon. Baneliness is almost done. At this point, Rattata needs nothing but units. I think if he builds nothing but Roaches, Ravages, Lynx from here on out, he should be fine. But especially the first 20 seconds are going to be very, very scary. And he's actually still sending a couple of units to the other side of the map, or he's looking for a flank. I guess he's going to try to surround the Immortals, which could be a big play. But at first, we need to make sure that... Oh my god, that is sick. He actually gets both Immortals. Warp Prism is going to try to save it, though. Yeah.
Oh, the pickup's huge.
But this is still very good for Rattata, right? Because now he has a lot of extra time, a lot of extra Roaches are coming out, a couple of extra Corrosive Balls rain down from the skies.
The thing is, it also meant that he wasn't able to warp in during that time, so his army supply wasn't really populating. He does warp in now, but he is very committed with his attack. He needs to get a lot of damage done. We are going to see the Charge Lots getting it on top of this army. Might be able to use the War Prism to kind of ferry the Archons forward, which is what he's looking to do, I think. This is actually very scary for Rattata right now.
It's looking very good. Definitely good micro by Gerald. Did not just lose all of his Zealots one by one. The Archons are starting to run a little bit low, but the Immortals should have their barriers again. I mean, the micro is honestly very good on both sides at this point. One Archon is low, and the Archon goes down. Don't lose War Prism, though, because if we lose the Prism, we definitely lose the potential. So far, it's been all right from Gerald, but he needs more. He knows he needs more. He gets a couple of really good shots up there, though, with the Immortals and the Archons. Wipes in a few more Zealots. Will the Prism live? Yes, because the Corrosive Balls are absolutely onto nothing. I mean, Gerald's supply doesn't look good, but it does feel like he did a decent amount of damage.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, he doesn't actually kill the 4th base. He did lose one of those Immortals. Part of the reason that looked like... It felt like there was so much potential right there from that push, but that entire fight took place completely on creep. There was not a single moment where that fight was off creep, and that is really, really rough. And now we see a bit of a Hail Mary play with these DTs, hoping that he can somehow hold it home with Disruptors and get a ton of damage with the DTs on the other side.
This is where you wish you still had 1 or 2 Archons to work with too. I mean, the Dark Templars may be able to find some success, but if we end up losing the 3rd base, that could very well be the end. This Disruptor shot needs to be big, and it's decent, but it's not quite big enough. Battery overcharge, can it save the Nexus? It's good, but it is not that good, and that means that Gerald is now knocked down to being a 2-base Protoss, and that is not where he wants to find himself. Yeah. I mean, there was potential. I think the micro was alright, but Rattata just had very good Roach Ravager micro there. On creep, sure, but it still wasn't easy, because a couple of times it felt really close to that tipping point where even the Zealots were going to make the difference. But Rattata did a great job in just making sure he did not fall apart, and the counter was devastating.
Yeah, it really was. And now we see a Gerald who's on half the supply of his opponent. Almost all of it is in army supply, which is never comfortable. This is going to need to be some of the biggest disruptor shots we can see in this matchup in order for Gerald to really even be able to survive, let alone make a game of this. It really feels like if the interception didn't come in on those, actually, we'll talk about that a little later, because we've got an engagement shaping on up. Gerald, he needs to find an engagement, but like it has to be taken defensively for him to have any chance.
A couple of Novas. Getting a little connection. We have one more. That one is actually very good. Gets the Ravages, gets the Banelings. But there just really isn't a lot of Protoss here. And even after the Novas have done their job, there is a lot of Zerg left over. Rattata gets a very easy cancel on that Nexus. And I am afraid that this is going to be it with 100 supply lead. I mean, that Nova is about as big as they are ever going to be. But we need around 3 more of those before I'm a believer.
Yeah, and he gets another one, but the third one is not what it needed to be. And like you said, it needed to be a lot of really good Novas. He's still got some, fighting power in this army. But even if he wins this fight at this point, it is a 4-base Zerg versus a 2-base Protoss. The natural is breached. We're going to see another huge disruptor shot. And Gerald is he's making a case for himself here. He is that lawyer in Poland. He's making a strong case, but man, he just does not have the units, it feels like.
I think Rattata is about to make an objection to that statement, though, mate, because he's like, well, is he, though? He's still on 2 bases. As far as I know, I'm still on 4. Rattata, of course, does need to be careful that we don't have an epic throw here on such a big moment where there are still 2 disruptors, and if 2 of those Novas are as big as the other one we saw, it's like, okay, we have seen crazier things. At this point, it should really still be all the Zerg, and I think we are just waiting for that one final sweet engagement. Maybe check for hidden bases just in case our opponent got very creative. Nova is a little early there, but I mean, there isn't really a whole lot Gerald can do. That's a pretty good Nova once more. All right, at this point, Rattata really needs to chill a little, but he does still have so many units left over that I think it is going to be good enough. There is nothing to protect the Immortal. There is nothing to protect those Disruptors. I don't know what the War Prism was off to. Maybe trying to warp in a few more DTs as Gerald realizes that just defending on 2 bases is not going to do it. But this will be it for Rattata.